Suhail.
Mike.
And we're your friendly neighborhood nerds.
Yes, welcome to NerdFellas. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man Homecoming. Saw it Thursday night, right?
Thursday night.
I just saw it. And we have some thoughts. So we're going to be sharing the good, the bad, the ugly. So let's get started. The basic synopsis is Peter Parker struggling, as usual, with life and being Spider-Man. The good thing about it is that we don't have a retelling of the original story. We kind of already know what happens with Uncle Ben, and he's actually never really mentioned it.
Poor guy doesn't even have to die a third time.
He doesn't have to die anymore, I think. Just got tired of seeing that. We have new love interests, we have new friends, diverse characters, so it's definitely an interesting film.
Definitely breaking those social barriers.
Yes.
And, diverse, ethnic barriers, I guess you could say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from the principal to the friends to families, it's very diverse. Great diverse cast, and everyone I thought was awesome. Mm-hmm. And just like everyone's been praising Tom Holland, I can praise this guy too, because I mean, he brought the persona of Spider-Man to the screen that we haven't really seen before. And he is older, just like Tobey Maguire was, just like Andrew Garfield was, but he looks way younger.
Yeah, he does.
So it actually works really well. So let's talk about some good things.
Well, I like the way the movie started off. Like you said, we didn't have to get the whole building up to how does he become Spider-Man. It's almost inferred. Well, it's actually implied. As the movie progresses, it implies that Ben's already died.
Yep.
He doesn't want to put his aunt through any more pain with her finding out who
he is.
Right. Yeah. And it's also implied that it was a spider that indeed bit him. Yes,
and I liked how they even mentioned, there's a point in the film where Ned, which is the best friend of Peter Parker, how he's like, "Can I get bit by the spider?" He's like, "The spider's dead."
Yeah.
So he was the only one that has that power, at least as far as we know. We'll see.
We got to see, cameos from all of the Avengers, from Civil War.
Yeah,
and it was kind of his point of view, real nerdy, like super excited. He's filming himself, his transition into being somewhat of a cameo of the Avengers.
Yeah, and it was I liked the way they started it. The whole, I'm talking very beginning from when we see the producing companies. So when we first see Sony, typical, you see Sony, you see Paramount. These are the main producers and copyright holders of the movie rights to Spider-Man.
And side note, the entrance where you get the whole Marvel going through.
Yes, that gave me chills.
It was bad.
And that's why I was excited, because first you get Sony, and right after that, you don't see the Marvel logo yet. You see an introduction to the Vulture.
Right.
His humble beginnings, just a struggling dad, excited he got this contract, and he's going to be, cleaning up the city, and he's very excited until the government steps in and says, "No, you guys are fired, we're taking over."
Right.
So we finally see where he's going, and this takes place when we meet Vulture. When we first meet him, this happens immediately after the first Avengers film.
Right.
So then we get 8 years later. Now it's during the time of Civil War, immediately after.
Well, it's kind of it starts towards the end of the climax of Civil War, because he's filming himself.
And that's where it was kind of cool, because on the ruse, and then he just jumps in, and that's what's cool, because it's Sony logo, Vulture story, then it's the Marvel logo, and you're like, oh, it's kind of a tease too, because they're like, oh, it's just Sony, and the fans that are like looking into it, yeah, right. Then it's like, just kidding, and then they even threw in Spider-Man into the logo, so it's like, oh, he's back with the family, Yeah. And then we get, of course,
back where he belongs.
Exactly, and that's why it's called Spider-Man Homecoming. Not just because this takes place, the climax happens on Homecoming night, but because he's back home with Marvel, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What other good things did you like?
For me, one of the show stealers was Michael Keaton, man.
He was good, and there was a lot of people that, when first reviews or reactions came out, they were like, Michael Keaton was okay, but I thought he was freaking awesome.
The scene in the car, man, that part was...
Oh!
That was... Okay.
That was intense to me. Me and my wife were like,
I just remember, oh shit.
Yeah, and Tom Holland plays it perfectly because you can see the devastation on his face.
And the thing that's really unique about that, which I thought he did such a good job about his character, was, I mean, you have this kid who's got these superhuman abilities. He's very strong. He's still coming into his own, but he's extremely strong. Mm-hmm. But he's still very young-minded, and so you got that authority type person kind of like giving you that.
Yep.
That push down, and he was just kind of like, oh.
And you can still see that fear. You can distinguish the fear as a kid.
Right.
And you first kind of notice it when he tries to do an interrogation.
Right.
With, I forgot Aaron
Davis.
Aaron Davis. So he tries to interrogate Aaron Davis, and he kind of like jumps at him and he kind of backs off.
Right.
But then he's reminded, well, I have these superpowers.
Right.
Why is he afraid? And then we encounter that again with Michael Keaton. So you get that type. And Michael Keaton's performance was really good. And he was actually one of the very few villains in the Marvel universe that was actually well developed.
Yeah.
Because we have a good background on why he's doing what he's doing.
A sense of purpose.
We didn't get that with, like, in Guardians of the Galaxy. We didn't get it with Ronan. We didn't get it with actually a lot of villains in the cinematic Marvel universe.
Yeah.
But yeah, Michael Keaton was cool. I've been a Spider-Man fan for years. I mean, even friends from my childhood, they would always get me shirts and toys, and they knew it was only Spider-Man or Star Wars. And then having both of them in the film, just having like Ned and Peter Parker, like, oh, I just got the Death Star Lego set, and I'm like, what? That's so cool. He just pops up with little Darth Sidious in the corner. I was like, that is so cool. And just seeing their excitement about it, and then of course they're nerdy just like we are, and the girls are like, oh, lame losers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good things going on with Spider-Man, because one of the things I was talking about with my wife on the Liz on the car ride back was how the cast was so diverse that one of the biggest surprises, just because of how diverse the cast is, was that Liz, the love interest, her dad was Michael Keaton.
That was a spoiler alert right there.
Big time. So it was just like, as soon as he opens the door, you're like...
Because there was a lot of rumors, too, that Zendaya's character was actually going to be the daughter of Michael Keaton,
Mm-hmm.
which was a pretty good thing to... I feel like they planted that to kind of throw you off of the trail a little bit.
Oh, yeah, big time. The other thing I liked about it was that there wasn't a convenience factor of his friends or family or loved ones in peril. So most movies will always set it up just like in the previous Spider-Man movies, where Mary Jane's always the target.
Right.
Always the problem. Same with Emma Stone, always the target. Here, it's still a secret, so no one knows that, and it's actually flipped on its head, because Liz Allen is the love interest,
right,
but she happens to be the villain's daughter.
Right.
So there's no threat to his love, except maybe for his Aunt May.
Right.
So that thing was completely flipped on its head, where Peter Parker doesn't have to worry about saving his girlfriend in this one, and I thought that was awesome, especially when we get to the ferry scene where the ferry's being torn apart.
Right.
And I was thinking, God, please don't put anyone on this boat that he knows, because it's just gonna, and they didn't. Everyone's a stranger, and I was like, that's
they stayed true to its core with that idea.
It was cool,
which was real impressive, because I felt like they definitely wanted to send a message with not giving people what they've already been used to.
Yes.
Which is, like, to just reiterate, the death of his Uncle Ben. Mm-hmm. Thank God we don't have to have another crying Andrew Garfield moment over that.
For the record, I do still like the films, and you have to watch the re-edited Spider-Man 3, but that's for a different conversation.
A very different conversation. But I liked how they stuck to their guns, and they created something that we should expect, but also at the same time we were thinking, okay, are we going to see another death of Ben? Are we going to see him being bit by the spider initially, and the whole development of him going through that transition from normal to superhuman? And I thought that it was pretty cool that it's already established, because it gives more room to create depth of character development, of him assuming the role of Spider-Man, which I thought was better.
And I mean, the only way that I guess it wouldn't work is if we didn't have those previous Spider-Man films, or if no one knew the history of Spider-Man. So
Right,
I mean, in that case, it'd be different.
I mean, it's almost common knowledge now. You know, he's bit by a spider. It's like
it's too obvious.
Right.
And he still kind of explains it, you know, to his friend Ned. Which, fun fact, there is a friend in the comic book universe, and his name is Ned Leeds, and he's actually a friend from the Daily Bugle. So that's a little bit different. Ned wasn't really a high school friend, but in the comic book, he was a Daily Bugle friend who ends up marrying Betty Brant, who was also mentioned in... She's in Spider-Man Homecoming as like one of the little reporters. Mm-hmm. So she's Betty. And then Ned Leeds ends up becoming the Hobgoblin in the comic. So it's kind of cool seeing these characters. All these roles are changed. They're all different, not just with their ethnicity or anything like that, but just their whole background stories. And I thought that was interesting too, because you're just kind of changing. You keep Spider-Man the center of it, and you can change all the characters around him, and it worked, and it didn't bother me at all. I also like that he has web shooters. He has to worry about making that web fluid at school.
I thought that was really cool.
That was awesome. It shows, you know, and it shows his intelligence too. Something that I think was kind of brushed over in the previous films. You know, they give him a couple of inserts of his knowledge in random topics, but here they kind of spread it out. And he's, you know, he's a really brilliant guy. So another interesting thing that I really liked was the reversal of the responsibility. Right. Everyone knows with great power comes great responsibility.
Which actually didn't come out in the film.
It did it. We saw the variation of it in Civil War. The really drawn out, hard to explain thing. But the difference in this movie from any movie made before, or even from the comics, is that Peter Parker always has had this internal struggle. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, who is he? Who's more important? And in previous films, previous comics, Peter Parker wants to be Peter Parker. He wants to have a regular life, a good job. He's brilliant, he could do anything, but he has a responsibility of being Spider-Man. Right. And in this movie, he's so young and naive, he wants to be Spider-Man. He wants to drop out of school and be an Avenger. He's willing to risk his friendships, his relationships with women or girls. And
anything he really had interest in has been dropped cold. Yeah,
everything. So I thought that was a nice, interesting take. It was refreshing. And I think a lot of these elements that we've been talking about is what made this probably the best Spider-Man film.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so.
And so let's cut to one of the more exciting things that I think that was plugged in. And it's the character Aaron Davis.
Yes.
So there's a scene where he's interrogating him, and as we find
which is hilarious.
And as we find out that, you know, there's a scene where Aaron Davis is actually trying to purchase some of the weapons that the Vulture and his men have been creating, but he was trying to get rid of them. And it's more of along the lines that, you know, he doesn't like what's been going on. He sees what's going on, and he makes a plug. You know, he's got a nephew out in Queens as well. And this alludes to none other than Miles Morales. Yep,
and it's something that I didn't even think about until you mentioned it. I was like, a nephew, okay.
And if you don't know, in that storyline, Aaron Davis is Miles' uncle. So.
Yeah, and of course, if you don't know who Miles Morales is, he's the Spider-Man that took up the mantle after Peter Parker died. So, hopefully we never see that happen to Tom Holland's Peter Parker, but, you know, it leaves space to see Miles Morales in the future. At this point, he's really young.
I think it was more of because fans wanted it so badly that this movie used his character instead. Oh, yeah. That it was just kind of like, hey, he's out there.
Yeah, and it was perfect too because Aaron Davis, well, the actor everyone knows as Childish Gambino, but he wanted to play Miles Morales. You know, a few years back, he was interested. He expressed his interest, and of course, at least he got to play the uncle.
Right.
The gangster uncle, you know, from Queens. So that was kind of cool. So I mean, there's a lot of little Easter eggs, you know, just from rumors and
Stan Lee's cameo.
Oh, Stan Lee's cameo was the best, and it was actually a little bit longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
It's like, don't make me come down there, punk.
Yeah. And then he starts hitting on the old lady across the yard.
Like, hey, oh, hey there. Oh my gosh, you know. And then of course, you know, we had the recent sad news that his wife passed away. So, you know, rest in peace to her.
Condolences.
Yes, condolences. But it was cool seeing Stan in there. I'm glad he got to make an appearance in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Can I say his cameos just get better and better?
They do, right? And then Deadpool kind of took a crazy turn, but
Tony Stank.
Tony Stank. Yes, that's Tony Stank. Table for two for Tony Stank.
What was your biggest dislike about the movie?
There has to be dislikes, right? So I had a couple we talked about, but which one was yours?
Well, I feel like I'm very happy that they still chose to go the route of Peter Parker, because that's just you can't develop on something that's more canon than actual. Okay, well, what's the true idea of Spider-Man? We gotta start there. So I like that they kept that, and then they still kind of gave him a nod. But they completely flipped the script on MJ, and to me, that's just kind of like what made Peter Parker also Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up through, watching the cartoons for Spider-Man. I mean, that was my introduction to MCU, and X-Men and all that, and I just felt like I didn't like that it's Michelle. But what we don't know is they never really say Michelle Jane.
True.
So Michelle could be a middle name. It didn't bug me enough to obviously hate the movie, because I like the movie, but it was just like you fell in love with that character, the one that Peter Parker falls in love with, that red hair.
Yeah.
The whole aspect of that and their relationship, it was just what made it unique to them.
Yeah, and for me, I grew up reading the comics, and the comics are always important to me. So, and Mary Jane was the girl next door, the one that he married after he lost Gwen Stacy, and it's still interesting. Like I said, like all these characters have different takes, and this time MJ is the frizzy-haired, crazy girl that is just kind of off the walls and very observant and always around.
Right.
And she's not the typical Mary Jane who was a supermodel actress. Everyone wanted her.
Right.
This is the total opposite.
However, we don't know if we're going to see a transition into that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because, like I said, they named her captain of the debate team.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this type of status is going to kind of transcend her mentality and how she wants to appear.
Very true.
Making her kind of the star of the school. So
very true. One of the things that I keep thinking about that I didn't like is one of my favorite villains that, he's always been like a petty villain, but in the comics, Shocker was one of my favorites just because I loved his costume.
And we had two Shockers.
And we they
both got taken out.
Yeah. So, and we get introduced to Shocker, and he's played by this awesome actor, but he's taken out quick. And he was trying to make a name for himself.
So his character was disintegrated.
He disintegrated, and by accident, because Michael Keaton's character Vulture, he's he uses a weapon that he thinks is just gonna levitate him, but he ends up vaporizing him, and he's like, I thought that was the gravitational. So that was pretty funny, but I just got upset, and then the mantle of the Shocker is handed over to another one, and he does more with it, but then he's gone too.
Right, and you could tell too that they kind of played homage to it with the yellow sleeves.
Yeah. On the first guy, right? He had the costume.
Even the second one had his yellow sleeves.
Oh, yeah, the same thing, yeah.
But I remember leaning over and talking to my wife, like, "Oh, that's the Shocker." And then,
gone.
All right, well, there was the Shocker. What a shocker!
Stupid. I did like that they introduced Gargan, who later becomes Scorpion.
Right.
And
on 2 occasions.
Yeah, on 2 occasions. So it was cool because we saw him during the deal, then we saw him at the end of the credits.
Make sure you stay towards 2 end credits.
2 end credits. One which is pretty cool, and it elevates the character of the Vulture because it's so quick, but you kind of get a better insight into the character of Toomes because he's willing to protect the identity of Peter Parker for some reason, either because he wants to selfishly keep that secret for himself,
so he can pay vengeance, or out of respect to kind of...
because he saved his life.
Exactly, on multiple occasions. Saved his daughter's life and his. So.
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting because Gargan approaches him and says, "Hey, you know who he is, right?" And he says no. So and he does, and that was one of the most intense scenes in the film. Just
right.
Peter Parker's sweating his ass off, thinking, "Holy crap! I'm the girl I like. Her dad's the Vulture," and they end up in the same car, and they have this intense conversation where they just know who they are, yeah. So it's just like whoa. But yeah, so that, I mean, just the fact that Shocker was gone, and now we have a different kind of MJ, something we can get used to, you know, and we don't necessarily need a Shocker.
It's very obvious they wanted to break down social barriers and ethnic barriers as well, so I think they kind of figured, screw it.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna do this our way, and to be honest, I can't complain because they've never steered us in the wrong direction.
They haven't.
One of the big things in this movie that, for me, it doesn't draw criticism. I think it kind of helped develop the character.
Yeah.
And it was probably what is going to draw the most criticism is this an Iron Man 4?
So, my reasons why it's not an extension of Iron Man 4, or is not an Iron Man 4, is because, yes, it's the heart of it is all Spider-Man. Yes, Tony Stark, Iron Man is plastered all over it, but the only reason you get reminded of it is, one, the suit is made by Tony Stark for Spider-Man. And then you get, what did Peter Parker end up naming the ISO?
Oh.
Or the OS? Karen? No.
Yes,
Is it
I
Karen?
think it was Karen.
And just like Jarvis or...
You almost named it Liz.
You almost named it Liz.
Which still would have been kind of weird.
Yeah, that
would have made me crack up for personal reasons.
Yeah. I was like, yes! And then there was Karen. Damn it. But, so I mean, the whole story is definitely more Spider-Man, but you get, Iron Man is kind of like the railing at a bowling alley where Spider-Man's gonna go into the gutter, but then
kind of keeps him on track.
Kind of keeps him on track. That's the way I see it. But it does at the same time add more to maybe the finale of Tony Stark.
Right.
But and that's what I saw, especially when we got to see Pepper Potts come in. That was awesome.
So, to kind of, I guess, develop that a little bit more, what I felt like, he wasn't really, I felt like he was pretty absent from the movie. The idea of him obviously was pretty much there the entire time, but as far as his character being there, is pretty absent.
In fact, Happy was there way more than Tony Stark.
Right, and so it was more along the lines as I saw, you know, it's kind of like what we were talking about with the whole, with great power comes great responsibility, and I think that's what the suit was intended to be for Spider-Man, to develop as not only, you know, a superhero, but as an individual as well, and I think that's the test that Tony Stark put forth for him. So he was kind of like, to me, the one that kind of instills that idea.
Yes.
Which is...
Or it kind of solidifies it, I guess.
Right, which is another flip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But to me, what kind of put it back into, you know, the Tony Stark show was towards the end, you know, with seeing Pepper Potts, we see that they might get married.
Yeah.
Which goes to show, you know, maybe this is the last time we see Iron Man.
Very true.
And if we see the last of Iron Man at the end of this movie, you know, it kind of steers the direction of the movie just a little bit.
And the timeline was a little blurry because, you know this happens during Civil War. Spider-Man has his little diary at the beginning, then time passes, but the line kind of comes back into play when you realize that the comedian Hannibal, he comes in and says, I'm pretty sure that Captain America is a war criminal now. So you know this happens at the end of Civil War.
Well, I think it's already been after, because in one of the classes, if you remember that Peter Parker's in, they're talking about the Segovia Accords.
That's true.
So it's already been established.
It's already been established. And that's why, and that's the hard part though, because, and I think that's where we're going to find some issues maybe later on, because Peter Parker hasn't revealed himself to be Spider-Man. Right. And that was kind of one of the stipulations. But anyway, that's kind of me just, you know, I digress as well. But yes, so it does add to the story of Tony Stark when Pepper Potts comes out. Is he going to be married? Is he finally going to hang up the armor? You know, right. Where is his story going to go? But he's definitely peppered all over the movie. You know, he's just there, yeah. So he's there. So, you know, and it's like, it's cool though, because he's the mentor. The only thing I guess I could say I had beef with was the fact that he kind of says what his role is out loud. Right. He's like, you know, there's times where he says, you know, this is probably me just dealing with my daddy issues, but I feel I'm going to be the father figure for you. Right. You know, he says it out loud. And then at the very end, we already know that he had a conversation with Peter, and he told Peter, if you're nothing without the suit, then you're not, you don't deserve it, right?
Right.
And then he says it at the end, I think I needed to give you that push so you can get here and stuff. And we're like, we know this already, like you don't have to reiterate.
Yeah.
But then you gotta stop and think, this is his persona. This is Tony Stark. He likes to take credit for things.
Right.
So it works out in the end. But ultimately, I didn't have a problem with it. I liked it because it was just a guideline for Peter to grow as a hero.
Right.
And it's awesome too. And this is kind of going back to the good a little bit, because I keep thinking of these good things. But the whole film, Peter's struggling to be Spider-Man too, because he's learning how to adjust and use his powers, and he's doing really minor things, giving old folks directions or stopping a bicycle thief.
Earning churros.
Earning churros. That was pretty funny. And yeah, I mean, he's trying to, and he wants to do bigger things, but throughout the movie, we're continuously reminded that he's not ready for the big stuff.
And I like that, because it shows that in the direction, at the end he chooses to kind of keep the Mal in a more controlled environment, as a neighborhood-friendly Spider-Man. And to me, that kind of holds true to what I appreciated about the cartoon when I grew up watching it. Is that there's always a fine balance of them showing that he was still in school, that he wasn't just Spider-Man. Yeah. So we're gonna get to see that kind of a character development as still being in school, still handling the Mal.
Yeah, it's actually the whole film and not just a quarter of it.
Right.
So it's good. I mean, and then as far as bad, if we reflect on the bad, there was the shocker that MJ, Tony Stark. I can't say is too bad for the film. I don't think it took away from it. Didn't add too much either. But he is the idol, and then we actually just got confirmation was definitely not planned. I mean, it could not have been planned. But in Iron Man 2, the little kid that put his hand up against the villain, they're like, oh, that was Peter Parker all along. And that's easy to say. And maybe they had plans back then, but I very highly doubt it. But
it was just one of those perfect coincidences.
Exactly.
But another thing, where would you like to see the direction of these films go? Because at the very end, it says Spider-Man will be back.
Well, he's signed on for 4 or 5 more appearances in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and
2 of those have to be possibly Avengers. We don't know yet.
Yeah, they have to.
Well, actually, we do know that the first Avengers, he will be in it, because they've already showed
set photos
of him with Tony Stark.
He's definitely going to be in both the final Avenger films, and the president or CEO of Marvel right now, Kevin, stated that Spider-Man 2 will kind of usher in the new phase of heroes, and the last Avenger film will kind of say goodbye to the old ones. So I can see a future where maybe Spider-Man may be a potential leader for the future of the heroes, as long as the Sony and Marvel deal holds.
I think once the money has been made, we will.
It's a success. It's going to be a success. This is actually the highest opening for an opening night on Thursday for any Spider-Man film. So.
Right. It was like what, 17.5 million or 16?
Close to 18.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So it's on track. It's going to do good, and they're selling awesome merchandise too that I'm going to buy, obviously. Yeah. So yeah.
As far as direction, though, where would you like to see it go character-wise?
Character-wise, I do want to see. I think we saw enough of his struggle.
We do know that we're going to see the Scorpion.
Mm-hmm. We're definitely going to see Scorpion. I don't mind. I want to see more of the villains that we haven't seen.
I heard rumors about Mysterio,
Chameleon. Mm-hmm. My biggest one that I want is Kraven the Hunter. I really want Kraven the Hunter, and for a long time I wanted someone to play him in particular, but he's just getting too old now. But yeah, I look forward to maybe a Sinister Six, as long as they can balance the amount of characters involved, because we know how easily that can fall apart. But
there was a split second that they were kind of subtly implicating another villain, and when he's locked in the truck and he sees all of these crazy gadgets. There was one thing where it kind of looked like it had a life of its own. It was like, like a little squealing noise. To me, that almost looked like one of the arms to Dr. Ock.
And I wouldn't mind seeing Doc Ock again, because it's a brand new universe, so it would be awesome. And he is an original member of the Sinister Six. Mm-hmm. So, and then we haven't seen a Hobgoblin yet. Don't give me any more Harry Osborns. I don't want any more Osborns. You kind of messed that up already. Maybe you have Ned turn into a bad guy. Who knows? I want Ned to be the nice guy, the guy that's in the chair.
Well, I think he's going to have to...
So I hope he doesn't turn. I really hope. Maybe a death.
Maybe he's done looking at porn. And
that was so funny. What are you doing? Looking at porn? Yeah, that was funny. All the guys cracked up with that one. But yeah, so as far as direction, I want to see more of these villains that we haven't seen before. I want to see a little bit more struggle with, the balance of his life, because that's the essence of Peter Parker. But I don't want to see him struggle as much as a hero. I want to see him grow into that and take on bigger tasks and see where he goes from there.
A very fun element too is that towards the end of the movie, Aunt May figures out that he's Peter Parker, which to me was one of the funniest parts of the movie. He gets back into his room and he takes off his Spider-Man hood, and then camera pans back and you see Marissa Tomei there in the back, and she's just like, "What the?"
And then it cuts.
And it was perfect.
It was an awesome ending, man.
It was a great send-off.
Yeah, it was. And as old as Marissa Tomei is, she's still gorgeous. Whew. And then, that was also funny when Tony Stark was like, "Hey, Aunt May, hope you're wearing something nice." Oh, that was pretty funny too. But where do you want to see this go?
I would like to see, kind of like what you were saying, different villains, stuff that we haven't seen before. Like, I think Mysterio would be such a great villain because he has so many links throughout the Marvel universe, and I think it's just I think Kraven the Hunter would be.
That would be probably one of the best. Yeah, I think he would be really cool, and I'm sure there's a deal where at least one or two superheroes from the Marvel Cinematic Universe have to show up in his movies. I'm hoping that they can probably stay away from that,
But I think that's the direction that they're going now, because it's an easy way to cut down so much time and fit in more characters, as we're going to see in Thor in the future.
Oh yeah, but if we get more villains, cut out the time for those heroes and bring in more villains. So if I had a new Sinister Six involved. We already know there's Scorpion, we know there's Vulture. Give me Kraven, give me the Chameleon, give me Mysterio. Number 6, you could have Hobgoblin, you can have Hydro Man. So now we've discussed the good, the bad, time to get down to the ugly. What's the verdict? What are our final thoughts on this?
I would give this probably a 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is what our rating would be. But that lack of authentic MJ to me killed it.
Really?
And that's I will keep it at a 4.
Okay.
And I think also another thing is I'm all for diversity. But nowadays I feel like it's too much of a objective to make sure that we make things socially acceptable to where it kind of deludes what we appreciate about comic books and movies. Not that it's a bad thing at all.
No.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all, but I feel like in this sense it kind of forced us, like, what's his name, Flash?
Right.
He was supposed to be a white character, which that doesn't bother me whatsoever. I thought he did a pretty good job as a character.
He was pretty good, yeah.
He was douchey. He gave that whole tough feeling. Nobody kind of tested him, really. So I felt like he fit the persona pretty well. But at the same time, it kind of, keep it to things that we really enjoy.
Yeah, and I guess I partly agree, but I do like seeing the diverse cast. It does throw me off being a longtime Spider-Man fan, and essentially the comic books, everyone in it's white, so it was cool to see just all these different takes, especially Flash. We didn't mention him through the good or the bad, but he, like you said, he had the persona. He pulled it off, but you can also see maybe Flash's internal struggle of wanting to be liked and wanting to be a part of something. And he's also kind of smart because he's part of that group.
Right.
So there's different layers to Flash now that we hadn't seen before, because he's obviously this buff, douchey white guy that was the bully for Peter Parker.
Now he's somewhat of this scrawny guy who goes around calling Spider-Man Penis Parker.
Penis Parker. When I say penis, you say Parker. Penis Parker. So that was kind of funny. And I like how the revenge came back where he took his dad's car. Spider-Man ended up taking the dad's car and just totaling it. But yeah, so final verdict. I love it. I want to go see it again. Definitely worth seeing in the theater more than once.
Maybe we can get an IMAX showing in.
That would be pretty sweet. And I loved it too because it had this John Hughes feeling, this whole vibe, and they did a direct reference from Ferris Bueller, and then they obviously planted it there to be like, hey, this is what we're doing. See it? Do you see it? And I'm like, okay, I get it. And they just and the music was great. So I think everything was done right, and it's stuff that even Marvel hadn't gotten right with some of their films. So I think it was a good combination of having the power of Sony, the power of Marvel Studios, bringing the essence of Spider-Man and doing great casting. So, final verdict, worth it, 4.5.
All right.
I might give it 4.5.
And I had to do it beyond the rating of the movie. Out of all three Spider-Mans, how would you rank him?
You mean the actors? Or
yes.
The movies?
The actors.
Okay, actors. Woo! Oh my god. So I recently rewatched all the Spider-Man movies. I could rank the movies for you. Actor-wise, Tom Holland is the best so far because he has the young, vibrant Peter Parker that we all kind of wanted. And he's smart, he looks young, he is young. Tobey Maguire, he looked like a 30-year-old high school student, and so did Andrew Garfield, and Andrew Garfield had been my favorite, even though the movies kind of failed. But ultimately, it's Tom Holland because he combines the best of both Tobey and Andrew. Mm-hmm. He combines Andrew's funniness and he combines Tobey's dorkiness,
right,
and makes it Peter Parker. Whereas Tobey was only one thing and Andrew was kind of mostly one thing, and they tried doing the whole punk thing. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah.
So we'll do number 1, Tom.
All right.
Number 2, Andrew. Number 3, Maguire. What about you?
I think for nostalgic, biased purposes, I would probably put Tobey at a close second.
Okay.
And I'd put Holland up at the top, and I'd put Andrew at the bottom.
Now, if we go film-wise, now this is the number 6 in all the Spider-Man movies.
I would put the original Spider-Man second.
Okay. What's number 1? Is it this one?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's a close one between those two because we had kind of talked about that first movie, and seeing one of the biggest scenes for me was seeing an emaciated Tobey Maguire go into his bedroom and come out shredded. It was just kind of like we'd never really seen this type of introduction into like a superhero movie before, where someone gets
Peter, are you okay?
Ripped out.
I'm fine.
I'm good.
And I rewatched the first 3 and with Andrew, and if I had to rate them, I'm gonna put. It's hard, man, because I do really love Tobey Maguire's films.
Here's how I would rank it. I would say Tom Holland, first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire.
Okay.
Then the first Andrew Garfield.
Okay.
Second Tobey Maguire.
Okay.
Second Andrew Garfield, and then at the very bottom, last Tobey Maguire.
All right, mine's different then. So mine's gonna be Homecoming. Then it's gonna be Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man 3, and then Amazing Spider-Man 2.
You can't put that trash not last.
Let me tell you why. Spider-Man 3, you take out the stupid silliness that they added to it with the dancing and
emo
hair.
Okay.
Take that out. You have a great character in Sandman.
True.
You have a great character development with James Franco and the Green Goblin, his hatred. You have a great relationship dynamic between Mary and Peter and how they're growing apart. You have a great emotional ending to Franco's character, and the whole thing evolved or revolved around forgiveness.
Yeah.
So you take out the silliness of it, it could have been an amazing film. You know, it could have been an amazing ending, or if it had succeeded, we would have had another Raimi film for Spider-Man 4.
Right.
You know, but of course they did the stupid emo thing. I blame Raimi's brother. So whatever. But and Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't do anything for me emotionally. I didn't like any of the characters. The only emotional thing, of course, was the death of Gwen Stacy. Gwen. Spider-Man: Homecoming. It's in theaters. Go watch it. So far, best Spider-Man film.
If you watched it, go see it again.
Yes. Other than that, make sure that you follow, like, subscribe with NerdFellas. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and all the other platforms that no one even cares about anymore. But yeah, definitely check us out.
One last thing, if you're into apparel,
yes, go to riptapparel.com. Use promo code NerdFellas. You can get 10% off some awesome shirts like the ones we're wearing right now.
they love to give you great merchandise. Half of the shirts I want to buy all the time, but because I spend all my money on stupid things, I don't ever have enough to afford them.
And they're 24-hour deals, so you can get some awesome designs.
And you gotta be quick though.
Yes, so make sure you do that. Check it out. www.reptapparel.com and also www.nerdfellas.com. But other than that, I'm Mike.
I'm Sue Hell, and let us know what you think in the comments below. Nerd out.